Hey, how's it going, everyone? It is Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock here on the Pacific Coast. I am Kip Davis. I'm a biblical scholar and a specialist in early Judaism and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this is Vishanti.
Hello.
How you doing, Vish?
Man, the last few weeks have been ultra chaotic. Hoping they settle down just a little bit. I am safely ensconced in my new dwelling.
In Casa de Vishanti. Is that how you say it? Did I do it right?
It's with another person, so it's technically their casa. But yeah, it's because partly due to this community and their generosity that I was able to not be homeless and, afford all of the moving expenses and all of the overhead and nickel and dime stuff. So really grateful that I have a safe, comfortable place to sleep at night, and it has a beautiful view. So full of gratitude and, thankful to the community for helping me.
I think everybody deserves an applause. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I was still furiously unpacking and stressed out beyond all belief last Friday, and I just couldn't get here in time. So glad to be back.
Well, we soldiered on. It was of course, because when you're not here, there are things that do happen awry. So and last week was no exception. I made lots of mistakes that you would not have made. And
whether or not
Nitty,
Mercury's in Gatorade, right?
yeah. Yes, exactly. And Nitty popped in to help me out.
Oh, good. Okay.
So that was good. Yeah, I got backup, and it was fun. We got to talk about Genesis 6 and the Book of Enoch, and I got to show pictures of 4Q212, and did I? Oh yeah, and we talked about, that was cool too. This is the other part that you missed, Vish. We talked about you knew this, right? Now one of the very cool things about the Enoch texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls is that they make mention of Gilgamesh and Humbaba, the god of the forests from the Epic of Gilgamesh. So
I did not remember that. So dang, I'll have to go back and watch that.
Yeah, they appear in. I showed pictures of that too. They appear in one of the copies of the Book of the Giants, which is an Aramaic text that is very clearly riffing on First Enoch. It was part of like the Enochic tradition within early Judaism.
Jubilees picks up the ball and runs with it a little bit.
Yeah. The cool thing about the Book of the Giants, though, is that it was preserved and collected by the Mandeans through the medieval period. So,
cool.
and then after,
Mandeans
like, there was always
get enough like play, you know? No
Credit
one ever talks about the
play, yeah.
Mandeans.
Yeah, no, I know very little about them. They are very cool, though. The amazing thing, so scholars for a long time had suspected that the Book of the Giants that was collected by the Mendeans was actually a Second Temple, like written in the Second Temple period. And then, they found copies of the Book of the Giants in the
Hmm.
Dead Sea Scrolls written in Aramaic. They're not exactly the same as the text preserved by the Mendeans. They're fairly different, but there's like lots of close enough similarities that you can see, yeah, yeah, the book of the Giants that the Mendeans had was basically it's kind of the same book. So, no, as a matter of fact, they are not.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
So,
Simone
yeah.
writes, "Time for
Oh,
Zmirilt, Tishbachot, Barakot, and all that jazz."
all that jazz. So Simone's gonna be
Simone, I'm
happy.
trying. I'm getting slightly incrementally better at reading without the Nikud and trying to figure things out.
That was very good. But today's stream is going to make Simone very happy, because she tells me this quite often, that she gets fatigued
Hmm.
by watching terrible people and bad apologetics, which is
Same.
perfectly understandable. We all need a break every now and then, I think, don't
True.
we? So that's what we're doing today. Marin asks, why are there no vowel pointers in typed
They
Hebrew?
don't need them.
No. So this is sort of an interesting thing. Like for the longest time, Hebrew existed without vowel points, and then the Masoretes invented the Nakud in the 5th, 6th century CE, and added all the Nakud to the biblical texts, to, I don't think all, but lots of the Mishnah and
Hmm.
the Talmud. They added Nakud, the Nakud to those as well. When the modern Hebrew language was developed in the 19th century, they did not use the Nakud, and so now modern Hebrew speakers and writers, they just use the script and the language as it
Hmm.
was used in the before the medieval period and before the invention of the Nakud.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot easier when it's a vernacular language rather than something people are using liturgically or just writing. So,
yeah, exactly.
oh yeah,
So
start a couple things. James McGrath for the Mandeans.
hmm, I don't even know if I should tell this story. Um, but so I like James quite a bit, and I've not had him on my show. I probably should, and we should probably have him on to talk about his book on the Mendeans. But I so um it was at SBL in San Diego, so like 2 years ago
2 years ago.
now. I was just walking from my hotel to the conference center, and I ran into an old friend that I hadn't seen for a few years, going the opposite direction, and she was telling me that she was on her way to a session because she was on a panel, uh giving, as one of the reviewers for a book. I was like, what book? And she pulls out um James McGrath's book on the Mandeans. I was like, oh, cool. And I asked her what she thought of it, and she
Not a
she
fan.
did not like it.
Ouch.
No.
Hey,
No.
I mean,
So,
that's the way it is. There are people that are gonna just be like, "Oh, this is great,"
mhm.
it adds a lot, and then there's some people like, "This is crap. It never should have been published. It's garbage. Bleh."
It's true. It's true. That's kinda how things work, in this business. Excited to
Excited to
learn
learn
more
more
about
about this
this
topic.
topic.
Mhm.
In my research thus far, it seems Psalm 29, 68, 21, 10, and parts of 89 are particularly old. Yeah, you're probably right. I feel I probably the viewership's gonna drop to nothing here as soon as I say this. I feel like maybe the the title on the thumbnail maybe a bit clickbaity, but
Oh.
while listen, we're definitely talking about the oldest psalms that we have represented physically,
Mm,
the oldest copies that we have of the psalms. We're not going to be spending a lot of time talking today exploring which of the psalms in the book of Psalms are the oldest, but we are going to talk about um, things that we can observe in the manuscripts that we have, that tell us it's there's a lot of important information in there, to help us understand, how this book developed, the book of the Psalms. So,
mm,
which is something I think this is also something that a lot of people just don't think through, even in the same way that we think through, yeah, in terms of the development of biblical texts, like, the book of Jeremiah or the Torah or, so many of these other texts. I don't think people really think through the implications or the shape of the book of Psalms, um, up to through a very, late period. We'd better be talking about the Ahab Jezebel wedding. I'm afraid not. Uh, but,
That's a buddy of mine. We got to go see the petroglyphs together.
oh, that's the petroglyphs guy.
Mhm.
Hey, petroglyphs
Yeah.
guy. Good to see you. So, yeah, so what
New
what we
nickname
are
unlocked.
doing. What's that?
I said new nickname unlocked.
That's that's mine. So, you shall forever, be known. So, oh, look, justice, well, we're gonna have to do one of these
Interesting.
days.
Okay.
A justice for Jezebel. Um, who really like just there is there is one power couple in the entire Bible. There's just one, I think. And it's that one. It's Ahab and Jezebel. And
Mm,
I think in terms of presentations of assertive, powerful women, in the biblical text in the history of Israel who just got shit done, Jezebel's probably at the top of that list.
but of course, having a woman who's got her own agency and
Mhm.
willpower and does things for herself, not not the favorite of, patriarchy,
Why
you
do you
know?
think they
They would
hated her
rather you
so
be,
much?
like, submissive and passive, but yet, on the other hand, weirdly industrious. So, whatever. Tree Clam Tad for 2 says, "Yay, Vish is back, now I don't have to listen again." Well, I'm not an expert on this topic,
I
so you're gonna have to,
I aim to
listen
please,
to him.
Tree Clam Tad. That's what I'm all about. So,
Chuck says, "I thought Vish moved. Why is she still in the same
we all
place?
thought that.
Did she make time
I
stand
know,
still?
right?
She only lives a single moment now." Look at the sanctum has doors to many locations, so maybe I just installed a new location door.
See, the truth of it is that, Vicious studio has always been in the sanctum, and the sanctum just exists in this,
Pocket dimension.
yeah, in the pocket dimension. So she just
Mhm.
goes and she comes and goes, from wherever she is, right? This is how it
Mhm.
works. Oh, hey,
wandering
look.
to and fro throughout the earth.
It's been a
Oh,
very
hey,
long
Cheryl.
time since we've
Yeah,
seen
good to see
Cheryl. It's
you.
good to see you.
Yeah,
Wow. Welcome.
fancy
So,
updated avatar and everything.
I know, right? Look at that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, see, all you have to just just give it some thought, Chuck. It'll make sense. So, yeah, so today
Yes. Plots of land are ridiculous around here.
don't I mean, isn't that just why you keep the sanctum in, a pocket dimension?
It is
You
cheaper,
save a lot of
fewer
money
property
that way,
taxes, yeah.
right? Mhm. So, I'm planning I actually have my house, on the market now,
Mm.
and I'm planning I'll be planning a move here in the near future, and I'm currently looking
Solidarity.
at options in the pocket dimension in a
Okay.
or maybe,
Plenty
just
of
one of my own.
space.
So,
One might
yeah,
say
right?
unlimited space.
That's unlimited space.
Yeah.
So, it's a good option. Uh,
They're asking if I'm a D&D player. I've played it a
they
couple
are.
times. I'm not very good at it. It's not really my preferred tabletop game. I'm a more of a like a World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade type. So,
All
anyway.
right. You're gonna are you, sending an invitation? User
Oh, I have no
GK9
idea. Just
LG5
that
SB for Y. Yeah.
happened to catch that.
Yeah. So, okay. Today, what we're doing today is, I thought I'll back up and what prompted this is that last week, I received an invitation to write a chapter, for a forthcoming, Oxford handbook, which was nice. I was excited
Mazel's.
about that. Thank you. So, oh, I need to pull this up again. Now, it's the Oxford Handbook of Biblical Hebrew Poetry. Or no, it's the I think it's just the Oxford Handbook of Biblical Poetry. And I've been asked to write the chapter on the materiality of Hebrew poetry, of biblical Hebrew poetry.
Very cool.
And, I believe the reason they asked me to do it is because of a paper that I wrote. I think I said on the description in 2017. It was actually 2015 or 2016. It was published eventually in 2017, where I sat down and this is something that I started and I haven't done much further exploration on, but would like to in the future. This would certainly be something that would be part of another research project that I've kind of had in the works with my friend and colleague Matthew Monger. Um,
Mamonger,
but
who works at
yeah, the
Mother
Bible
Effin'
Monger,
Oslo.
Mother F in Oslo. That's right. Uh, so I mean, I've actually written a lot more of these than, than books themselves. So, oh, no. You keep falling asleep to, the audiobook.
Doesn't
Well, that's not
I mean, that's a
that's
compliment, but also not good for the dog, I guess.
oh, I guess so. Is that a compliment?
Yeah, you have a very
It's supposed to
sonorous
okay.
voice,
Oh,
apparently.
well, that's nice.
Mm.
But it's also supposed to keep you awake and engaged. It's supposed to be like, "Oh my god, what's gonna happen?
I don't
What's gonna
think he
happen
narrated
next?"
the audiobook that way, though.
Oh,
I don't think he wrote it that
maybe
way.
not. Uh, maybe not. So, so, I think I was asked to write this chapter for the Oxford Handbook on the basis of this article that I wrote, back in 2015, oh, called, Structure, Stichometry, and Standardization: An Analysis of Scribal Features in a Selection of the Dead Sea Psalm Scrolls. So, if you know a little bit about the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's, you know, a few things that people who start to study the scrolls learn right away. One of these things that a lot of people will learn up front fairly quickly is that there's a lot of copies of material from the Psalms in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they also had a lot of their own poetical texts as well. So this was these were obviously quite important to them. When one of my mentors and good friends, the late great Peter W. Flint, did his PhD at the University of Notre Dame back in the 1980s or 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I think it was. He wrote on this topic of all the Psalms manuscripts from Qumran Cave 4. When he wrote his dissertation, he was taking for granted the fact, and also trying to show in his dissertation too that the 150 psalm collection we have today, the what we call the Masoretic Psalter, is particularly ancient. That it traces all the way back into the Second Temple period. He thinks he's found evidence for this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is a component of his doctoral work. So, um, just when he talked about the Psalms, he would he would tell people, he would write this, that there were 39 copies of the Book of the Psalms in the Dead Sea Scrolls. 39 is a lot. We've talked about other texts on this channel before. Talked about the book of Jeremiah. There's only 6 of those. We've talked about the book of Daniel. There's only 8 of those. Talked about the book of Isaiah. There's 22 of those. Something that I have tried to make clear every time that I talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and in particular, copies of so-called biblical texts that we have in evidence in the Dead Sea Scrolls, is that when we have individual fragments, or when we have something that's comprised of just a few fragments, you cannot take for granted that this is representative of like a complete book. It's not like those 39 manuscripts of Psalms in the Dead Sea Scrolls all represent the 150 Psalm Psalter. They do not. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that today. That's part of the work that I was trying to do in this article that I wrote. I wrote this for a conference I was invited to at the University of Helsinki, put on by 2 friends of mine, Jeremy Penner, who is now a curator or a director of something at the Deansgate Library at the University of Manchester, and my good friend Mika Pajunen, who is a faculty member at the University of Helsinki, and has wrote extensively on psalms and prayers in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in Second Temple Judaism. He's also done a lot of writing about the books of the Chronicles. Um, excellent, excellent work all around. Everything that Mika does is phenomenal. So check it out. Anything that he's written, but so he put on this conference, and this was part of what I wanted to do. I wanted to sit down and go, okay, let's ignore everything else. Let's strip this down to the studs. Let's think about the Psalms just from a material perspective. I mean, how does that shape and change our perspective of this? Now, I took a fairly narrow approach to this because, like I said, there's 39 individual manuscripts containing text from the book of Psalms. I took a fairly narrow approach. I had just written an article in this book, here. Gleanings from the caves. This was the Dead Sea Scrolls and artifacts from the Scoia'tain collection. Let's make it less blurry. How do I do that? Oh, that's pretty good. So I had just written this article. Let's see if I can find it here. I should have flagged the page right away. I think it's fairly short. It's only like 10 pages. But I did this article called can we see that there? How's that?
Eh.
It's called High Quality Scrolls from the Post-Herodian Period. And this article was all about how there are scribal features in a lot of the manuscripts found in the Judean desert from later, like from after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple. So after 70 to, like the Bar Kokhba rebellion, there's a bunch of material that we have from this period. When it comes to so-called biblical manuscripts, there's something that we see there that's different from the other texts, the earlier texts, most of which that we have from Qumran. They start to structure their texts in these narrower columns that are very tall, over 40 lines, 40, 50, 55 lines of text in a single column that's quite narrow. This is where we start to see the margins become more justified on either side. They start to look more like medieval Torah scrolls, that more people would be familiar with. So I just come off of writing that. And so I thought I would take some of the same methods that I in of investigation for that article and apply it just to Psalm scrolls in the Dead Sea Scrolls collection. So I'll just show you this to start. This is where I started with my study. I made this, and this is published in the article too. I first of all put together this table which includes all the pertinent information concerning physical features. Well, not all of it, but a lot of it. So column height, line lengths, contents, and then the way that that the manuscripts are formatted in this structure column. And I'll explain this as we go through, whether the poetic material is structured prosaically, or it's just writing from the beginning of the line to the end of the line and starting over on the next line all the way through, as you would just write paragraphs in just about anything, or if it's written stichometrically, where each individual poetical stichos has a distinct scribal feature, sometimes appearing each on their own line, sometimes appearing in pairs on a line. I think there's possibly even one manuscript where which is tricola, which has a tricola arrangement where you have three individual stichos on individual stick on each line. So I've put together this inventory, and I've got dates there for everything. And I did this for every single manuscript in the Dead Sea Scrolls that contains material from the Book of Psalms. I've also added in these two other texts, and I'll talk a little bit more about these. There are two manuscripts, 4Q380 and 4Q381 in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which have been designated non-canonical Psalms A and B. These are manuscripts that sound an awful lot like Psalms, but are unknown in any collection of Psalms anywhere. These are unique texts to Qumran. I thought it was probably important to include these in my inventory, just on the basis of genre. So I have everything in here And then from this material, I decided to look more closely at Psalms manuscripts where their writing block is quite small. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at this article that I wrote, this presentation that I made of of Psalms manuscripts written in smaller columns. Um, so I'm just going to put this on the stage here. What is stichometric? Yes, I will talk a little bit about this as I go through it. In fact, maybe I will just oh no, let's go back. See if I here, maybe I will just go there right now to show you. We'll come back to this. If you look at this slide here on stichometry. So it's the way in which material is formatted and arranged visibly on a manuscript. So I have three categories of stichometry. The first is a 1-to-1. So these are, as I said, these are not manuscripts that were written prosaically, where you just start at the beginning of the line and you keep writing until you get to the end of the line, and then you start over on the next line. These are manuscripts that were written in a format where each individual stick of a psalm. So psalms are written in parallelism, where usually there is two or three parallel statements in common, and this is how biblical Hebrew poetry works. It's basically restatements of the same thing in different terms and different words. Most of the time, they're two parallel statements together, and a stichometrically arranged manuscript is a poetic text where each individual parallel statement is a stick, and it receives either its own line or it's broken away from the rest of what's written on the line in some way. So I've got three classifications here: what I call a 1-to-1 stichometric arrangement, a 2-to-1 stichometric arrangement, or an acrostic arrangement. So, and they look like this. So each in a 1-to-1 arrangement, each parallel statement, each stick in a in the poem gets its own line. It's just a dedicated to its own line. You write the stick out. When you get to the end, you just start the next one on the next line. A 2-to-1 arrangement is where each parallel statement appears separate from the other one, but on the same line. So, and then it moves to each line has two pairs, or sorry, a pair of parallel statements. And an acrostic arrangement, there's a number of psalms that are acrostics. Acrostic poems are poems where each verse or each stick starts with a letter of the alphabet, and then they just go through from Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dal, all the way through to Tav. And so those usually contain 22 or 44, or in the case of Psalm 119, it's like 106, because there's like eight individual sticks for each letter of the alphabet. So,
Mm.
so yeah, that's what we're looking at with stichometry here. But we'll get to that. Um, and we'll start with this. Anything before I jump into this, Vish? 34 minutes late. Oh, there's a beautiful Sephardi Nach in the Bodleian Library, which has Job laid out in a wonderfully balanced system. Yeah, that's cool.
That's relevant to my interests.
Yes,
And Dave
indeed.
says an acrostic is a guitar you don't have to plug in.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um,
Ugh.
very smart.
Mm.
Did you ever figure out, Dave, whether or not Saskatoon is being attacked by Iran, or if that's something else going on there? I'm interested to know. Let me know what you think. So, all right. So I will just get into this. I'm going to read this paper. Um, and part of why I wanted to do this too is as a review for me. So I'm going to talk through some of these things, and yeah, if you have questions or if you have comments, please feel free to include those in the side chat. This is going to keep her eyes open for that as usual. I'm not going to be able to see a lot because I'm going to have uh this. Oh, I was going to, yes, I'm gonna embiggen my cursor here. Where is that? Sorry, I can't see when I'm do. You know what? I'm just gonna stop sharing for a minute so that I
Okay.
can uh take that off. Let's see. Dude, no, not that. There we go. I need that one. I am a professional YouTuber.
Dave adds for 2 beaver bucks. They're after our strategic
Yes.
pierogi reserves.
Just yeah, hold on to them. We're counting on you, Dave, to look after the
Hold
pierogi
fast,
reserves.
Dave.
Hold
Hold fast.
fast. Hold fast.
Better than Ember writes, what if we have salmonella?
Ah! Very good.
Yada-da-da-da-da.
Oh, and where's my color? There we go. Okay. And I'm gonna make it red. So good. All right. We can all see this now. See,
Oh,
look how
yeah,
big.
that's
Look at my
much better.
cursor. Isn't that awesome? It's so good.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very good. All right. So, let's begin, shall we? So, in the course of editing Judean Desert Scroll fragments for the publication in Gleanings from the Caves, Dead Sea Scrolls and Artifacts from the Scoia'tain Collection, which I showed you earlier, my co-editor, Torleif Elgvin, the famous author of My Lips
My
Play
lip
Flute
plate
for the
for
Highest.
the highest.
Yes. And a colleague, Orstein Jusnes, who wrote a very, very good book about Dead Sea Scrolls forgeries in Norwegian. So my Torleif, Orstein, and I had come to discover an interesting Scrabble phenomenon, whereby a handful of manuscripts from the late and post-Herodian period appear to have been structured according to an established pattern into narrow columns containing a high number of lines. This discovery prompted me to conduct a survey of scrolls from several Judean desert sites, which in turn revealed that there were standard construction procedures in the post-Herodian period that were applied to some texts, but which delimited these scrolls to layouts and columns that ranged between 30 to 50 lines, but within writing blocks under 10 centimeters wide. Now, to give you an idea here, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, like in the manuscripts from Qumran in particular, on average, now there's a number of different manuscripts of different sizes and shapes, I guess, but on average, it seems that a 12 centimeter writing block was pretty standard. So these are even narrower than that, under 10 centimeters wide, but very, very tall with lots and lots of lines. So the data was particularly intriguing when it came to manuscripts containing text from the Masoretic Psalms, as I ended up eliminating these from the following observation. Oh, sorry, upon the following observation about Qumran scrolls that were dated to the late 1st century CE. And here's the statement I made in the article. 5 of the 8 scrolls from Qumran preserve portions from the book of Psalms. And this may suggest that these texts form their own distinct structural category, apart from what we observe in the Scoian post-Herodian group. Thus, the Psalm scrolls are disqualified from the study by their conspicuous common hymnic content. While only 2 of the Psalm scrolls in this list are structured stichometrically, all 5 of them share this poetic feature, and this in turn appears to have factored in their production in narrow columns. So basically what I'm saying here is at the outset, it seems like Psalm scrolls generally had a predilection for narrower column blocks in the manuscripts where they were written. This list of Qumran scrolls containing psalms included 3QPS, 4QPSC, it's 4Q85, 4Q87, 4Q89, and 4Q98C. To this inventory, I added one manuscript from Matsada and the great Nachal Hever psalm scroll. These 7 scrolls represent over half of all the scrolls containing psalms from at least the second half of the 1st century CE. So after 50 CE until, the 2nd century. Emmanuel Tove's Analysis of Scribal Practices in the Judean Desert Scrolls, which he published in 2005, suggests that on average, scrolls from the Second Temple period contained columns of about 20 lines, and that within these documents there is a positive correlation between column height and column width. This is what he says here. Long text naturally required longer scrolls, recognizable by their length and column height. In other words, larger scrolls contained higher and wider columns, while smaller scrolls were composed of shorter and narrower columns. Tove's observation requires some qualification based on the accumulation of the data. According to a survey of the discoveries in the Judean Desert editions, supplemented by Tove's works and others, it appears that on average, literary compositions from Qumran reflect anything between a 1:1 to a 2:1 height to width ratio. You understand what I mean by that, right? Where the height ratio for a column is anywhere between 1:1, so more square, say equal height to its width, or to a 2:1 ratio where the height is twice the width per column block. Nevertheless, despite this substantial range in both scroll height as well as average column widths, Tove's intuition would seem to be correct. And this is the outcome of the data that I analyzed with regards to the entire collection. For 27 scrolls, up to 10 centimeters in height, columns range in width between 5.9 centimeters to 17 centimeters, with most of these falling between 7 to 11 centimeters. For 48 scrolls, between 10 to 20 centimeters in height, columns range between 4.3 centimeters to 17.8 centimeters, with most of these falling between 8 to 12 centimeters. For 29 scrolls, between 20 to 30 centimeters in height, columns range between 8 centimeters to 16.8 centimeters, with most of these falling between 8 to 12 centimeters. And for 18 scrolls over 30 centimeters in height, columns range between 8.5 centimeters to 16.4 centimeters, with most of these falling between 10 to 13 centimeters. So while it's not perfectly consistent, there does seem to be a general uh, 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 this is a general feature that we can determine the height of, or sorry, we can determine the height of a column, generally speaking, or estimate it on the basis of column widths. And this works as well for the entire length of the manuscript as well. Generally speaking, scrolls that contain higher columns with more lines and columns that are wide will be longer. Like the entire manuscript will likely be quite large as compared to scrolls which have smaller and low and shorter columns, which are quite small. The 7 psalm scrolls mentioned above contain columns ranging in size between 3.8 to 8.5 centimeters in width, but then fluctuate considerably in height between 8 lines, as in 4Q89, up to over 43 lines in Matsuda 1F. 4 of these manuscripts show clear evidence of comprising collections. So there being more than just one psalm in 4Q, or actually more than just 2 psalms in 4Q85, 4Q87, Matsuda 1F, and the Nachal Hever Psalm Scroll. That's 5.6 Hev 1B. And all 4 of these, all 4 are also classified on the low end of the scale for line lengths. This is especially so for Matsuda 1F, where the text is arranged into extremely narrow columns in a prosaic format. A cursory review of other scrolls containing psalms reveals that several more of these manuscripts appear in contrast to Tove's observations about column dimensions. So 4Q Psalms B, 4Q84, from the late Herodian period contains columns of 17 lines in a stichometric format that measures between 3.5 to 5 centimeters. The mid to late Hasmonean 4Q Psalms D, 4Q86, comprises columns measuring less than 6 centimeters and was reconstructed to a height of 19 lines. These several examples suggest a certain peculiarity with regards to the structure of this particular set of scrolls. So in this paper, I'm going to seek to do a few things. I'm going to provide a closer investigation of Psalms manuscripts that are arranged in especially narrow columns, beginning with a short survey of a selection of scrolls, which consist of columns measuring less than 7 centimeters wide, since this feature is a product of stichometry for some of these texts. I keep fluctuating between stichometry and stichometry. Sorry about that. I can't decide how I want to pronounce it. Second, I will present a short review of stichometric production in the Judean Desert Scrolls with a stronger focus on those discovered at Qumran. But stichometry does not address the entire phenomenon, and several of these manuscripts appear with no such obvious arrangement. Then, in the final section, I will pose questions with regards to manuscript size, date, and content in an effort to provide more clarity to the important matter of material structure and appearance in the interpretation of poetical texts and hymns. So that's what's going to happen here in what follows. And we start with the survey, which is pretty fun, I think. In his exhaustive study of Psalms and the Dead Sea Scrolls, Peter Flint counts at least 39 manuscripts that contain Psalms which appear in the Masoretic Book of Psalms. Flint precludes manuscripts that quote Masoretic Psalms from this list and designates the manuscripts in his focus rather arbitrarily as Psalm scrolls. These problematic methodological details notwithstanding, I will proceed in my own study from Flint's list and with the help of a more comprehensive data set provided by Ava Jane in her Psalmen oder Psalter, I have arrived at a selection of 8 Psalms manuscripts, which contain columns that measure less than 7 centimeters, a figure that falls well below even the average width of Tove's grouping of small-sized scrolls. So, the first of these is 4Q Psalms B. I have a picture of some of the fragments here. This is actually a fairly extensive manuscript. It's actually really well preserved. And maybe, Vish, if we want to take a moment, do you want to put up on the screen some of the pictures of this particular manuscript from the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls collection? So yeah, like look at this one. This is one of the pictures that I have. What's really remarkable about this particular manuscript, you can see it here. You'll notice that almost always when I show pictures of manuscripts from the Dead Sea Scrolls from Qumran, they're black and white. And the reason for that is because they're infrared pictures, infrared photographs, because most of them are too dark to read with the naked eye. This particular manuscript is, yeah, they look like this by and large. But this particular manuscript, you don't have to do that. You can read it nice and clearly just in the natural light color photographs. They're quite spectacular. Yeah, look at this one, right? Look how clear that is, how sharp and amazing that is. It's a pretty stunning manuscript, and we have a lot of it too. Um, I'll just put this I'll just put this back up now, and we'll talk a little bit about this particular manuscript. Where am I? Okay. Yeah, so 4Q84 consists of 37 fragments that preserve material from Psalms 91, 92, 94. There's a run from Psalms 99 through 103, Psalm 112, 116, and 118. The manuscript is dated to the late Hasmonean or early Herodian period, that is the second half of the 1st century BCE, and it's structured stichometrically in a one-to-one format. And you can see that in the picture here. Each line on this manuscript, you'll notice, consists of either 3 or 4 words. And that's because each line of this manuscript is an individual poetic stick or verse. And it's just written that way from beginning to end. Every single poetical statement or verse gets its own line on the scroll. Columns are reconstructed to 17 lines. So that's 16 or 17 lines in each column to a height of 14 centimeters. And they range in width between 3.5 to 5 centimeters wide, which is very, very small for the Dead Sea Scrolls. So the next one in our list is 4Q Psalms D, 4Q86, which I think is particularly interesting. 14 fragments from 5 consecutive columns are preserved in 4Q86, containing portions of only Psalm 147, Psalm 1 and 104, and probably Psalm 146. And importantly, they appear in that order. 147 and 104. Psalm 146 possibly before Psalm 147. So right away, you've got a manuscript here which preserves a different ordering of material than you have in the Masoretic in the Masoretic Book of Psalms.
I'm
So
looking at
this,
the centerpiece on the bottom line,
let me get
and
my
right there, yeah, and it's like,
this one.
normally I'm accustomed to seeing very even line spacing, and here it looks like they just squished in some text in between what would normally be very well-spaced lines. What's going on there?
That's a scribal insertion there. So they missed something
Ooh.
and had to come back and squeeze it in to the lines here. So this is a fairly interesting manuscript, and I'll talk about this as we go forward. But I want you to notice something here as I'm discussing and talking about formatting and arrangement, Scribal arrangement, the difference between prosaically arranged texts and stichometrically arranged texts. The last one we looked at is entirely stichometrically arranged, with every single verse gets its own line, a dedicated line, just all the way through from beginning to end. This manuscript starts in like this prosaic arrangement where he's just writing from the beginning of the line to the end. He's not following the poetic format, the internal poetic format of the composition. He's just writing normally, right? And he's doing this in this column here, and then in this column here. But now what happens is you get to the top of column 3. It's still in this prosaic format, but then down here, it switches. Now, look how much shorter these lines are. And then in the next column, look how much shorter these
Very
lines
narrow.
are. Yeah, because he's now shifted into a stichometric arrangement. And this happens this is Psalm 104. This happens at some point in Psalm 104. We don't have the transition point preserved, but to me, that's a very interesting feature, I think, in this particular manuscript. So, is this a black and white photo in visible light or a color reversed infrared? This is color reversed infrared. So all the black and white photos that you see are color reversed infrared. So the actual color photos, the natural light photos, the text is pretty much illegible. Very, very difficult to actually see with the naked eye, which is why so many of these texts were captured in infrared in the first place. All right. So yes, so the manuscript is dated to the late Hasmonean period. So this is an older manuscript as well than the last one we looked at. So that's like the mid to 1st century BCE. Columns are so like I think that's supposed to be early to mid 1st century BCE. I have a typo in here. So that's like from 100 to say 50 BCE. Columns are reconstructed to a height of 19 lines or 13.8 centimeters, and they measure approximately 3.5 to 6 centimeters in width. There seems to be a structural mix between the prosaic presentation of Psalm 147 and 104 up to at least verse 11 of Psalm 104. But this is then followed by the remainder of Psalm 104 in a 1-to-1 stichometric structure, beginning at some point between verses 12 to 14. So this one's really cool. It's really interesting, I think. Next, we have 4Q Psalms F, or 4Q88, which consists of 13 fragments and contains text from Psalm 22, 107, and 119, as well as a couple of other things that we did not know before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Texts which scholars have now identified as the apostrophe of Zion, the eschatological hymn, and the apostrophe of Judah. We know of these compositions from other copies of manuscripts in the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves. In fact, both the apostrophe of Zion and the eschatological hymn appear in the most famous of the manuscripts from the Dead Sea, the Psalms manuscripts from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is 11Q Psalms A, otherwise called the Great. It's called the Great Psalm Scroll from KF11. Quite often, if you hear anybody talk about the Great Psalm Scroll from Qumran, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about this very large manuscript of Psalms that came from Cave 11. It includes these particular compositions, the apostrophe of Zion, the eschatological hymn. So this particular manuscript that I have pictured here, 4Q88, dates to the late Hasmonean period. So that's like mid 1st century BCE. And it's structured in a prosaic format. So this is not a stichometrically arranged text. Nevertheless, columns have been reconstructed to a height of 25 to 26 lines, or roughly 15.5 centimeters, and around 4.5 to 5 centimeters wide. You'll notice that just from the picture that the hand here looks a little less practiced, or a little
Mhm.
less formal than the other manuscripts we've seen. That's something that I think we should take into consideration when we're evaluating quality and function for a lot of these sorts of texts, these sorts of manuscripts.
It's like when you're taking notes on the board or trying to write things
Yeah.
in your notebook and your lines gradually go upward or downward, and I can see that here. Like, they start out pretty
Hmm.
level, horizontal, and then
Yeah.
they just kinda
Yeah, and it's tough too, because some of this is the result of like environmental
Mhm.
decay and like
Warping and
it'll
all that stuff, yeah.
warp the
Yeah.
skin, and sometimes it's difficult to tell how much of this is actual damage to the manuscript and how much of this is a person, their own lines drifting a little bit, right? Are they starting to get a little bit small in their writing block? So, but it looks like sort of a different quality than the other two manuscripts that we looked at. All right, the next one we have
R Real
is
quick.
4Q90. Yes.
Miranda's asking, "Is the handwriting the same? Like, could it be one scribe started writing it like prose and the other one finished it stichometrically?"
So this is I think you're asking about 4Q 86, the one we looked at before the last one. That is something that Peter Flint actually suggested. He posed. He thought, well, maybe these are two different manuscripts or two different scribes. In my own investigation, I don't think so. The hand is clearly the same to me, and I don't think you can divide it into two manuscripts either. I'll explain some of that as we go here. This one's neat because this is well, I'll just read it here. Unlike the previous three manuscripts, 4Q90 is not a collection of psalms, but rather contained only Psalm 119. Material from verses 10 to 21 is preserved in a single fragment. It is dated to the Herodian period, which is the late 1st century BCE to the mid 1st century CE. So somewhere between say 20 BCE through to like 50 CE is the date for this manuscript. Um, Material from like virtually all extant copies of Psalm 119. And this is interesting. All the copies we have of Psalm 119 in the Dead Sea Scrolls, um, this acrostic psalm follows a stichometric structure. So Psalm 119 is a very large acrostic poem where each stanza, each verse, each stick begins with the same letter. And you can see that represented on this particular manuscript. You'll notice that the first few lines that are visible here all begin with the letter bet.
Mm.
And then the next 5 lines to the bottom of the column all begin with the next letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the letter Gimel. And this is how Psalm 119 reads from beginning to end. It starts with Aleph, then and there's 8 lines, 8 individual sticks of Aleph, and then 8 individual sticks of Bet, and then Gimel and Dalet, and so on and so on, which is why part of why this is the longest chapter in the Hebrew Bible is because it's just a very, very long acrostic poem.
It's my favorite psalm.
your favorite one. Well, this
Mhm.
is cool. You'll like this then. Something else I want to point out here is notice on the right side here how big that margin is. Look at all that empty space on the right-hand side. So there's
Mhm.
a reason for that. Um, and that is because this is almost certainly the beginning of the manuscript, the beginning of the scroll. The way scrolls work in antiquity is you leave a lot of space at the beginning and the end for your handle and for, so that you're not uh, careless to mark up the actual inscribed portion of the text as easily. So it's for you to actually hold on to. That's why they leave so much extra space. But when we see that, that's how we know. And this also provides us some certainty into how much to reconstruct here, because we know this is the very beginning of the manuscript. We know how many lines of text uh, there were that we don't have anymore, because we can just follow the acrostic format beginning with the letter Aleph. That's how we know that this text. Oh, let me just see here. Um, oh, maybe I didn't even include this. Okay. I'll just read the rest of what I have here. While the preserved portion of this manuscript falls within our structural constraints for column widths at about 6.5 centimeters wide, one wonders whether this is more likely a product of the fact that in the preserved portion, these stanzas are all quite short. By way of comparison, the more extensive copy of Psalm 119 in 4Q89 contains columns measuring between 6.4 all the way up to 9.5 centimeters, because some of these acrostic stanzas are much longer than other ones, right? So your line lengths are going to fluctuate really dramatically. But yeah, so that's 4Q90. Next, we have 4Q93. As with 4Q90, 4Q93 is also a scroll that contained only a single psalm. In this case, Psalm 104, of which verses 3 to 5 and 11 to 12 are preserved in two columns. You see only just a little bit here of the second column, but we're able to positively identify this stuff with verses 11 to 12 of Psalm 104. It's dated to the early Herodian period, that is the second half of the first century BCE, and it's formatted in a one-to-one stichometric format. So that means then that each individual verse or stick belongs on its own dedicated line. Columns were reconstructed to a height of 15 lines, or about 15.4 centimeters, and about 4 to 4.6 centimeters in width. And again, notice the very large margin on the right side. That's an indicator that this is the beginning of the manuscript. This one actually has a nice straight edge on the right side as well. So I that's probably the very beginning edge of the manuscript. Okay. The next one is 4Q Psalms R, 4Q 98A, consists of four fragments with the bottom portions of two adjoining columns containing Psalm 26:7 to Psalm 27:1, and then Psalm 30 verses 9 to 13. It is dated to the Herodian period. That's the late first century BCE to the mid first century CE, and was written in a prosaic format. The reconstructed columns measure between 5 and 6 centimeters wide, respectively, but there is some controversy with regards to the height of this scroll. In his DJD edition, Flint reconstructed a column height of more than 60 lines. based on the distance between Psalm 27:1, which is partially preserved on fragment 4, line 3, and Psalm 30, verse 9 on fragment 2, column 2, line 1. Jane has countered that the suggestion is dubiously based on the reconstruction of the word from Psalm 26:9 on fragment 2, fragment 2, column 1, line 2, which she believes could otherwise correspond to Hamam in Psalm 27:12 or Chaim in verse 13. This produces an alternative reconstruction of around 30 lines, which seems much more reasonable to me. A 60-line column height for a manuscript from Qumran is incredible. There's nothing even close to that. Even at Matsada, the later manuscripts, the largest manuscripts we have measure, I think the largest one has just over 50 lines. 60 seems like too much. Anyways, the visible ink traces on one of the photographs indicate that Flint's reconstructed iron is more feasible. But I would suggest that both proposals are likely wrong, since the succession of individual psalms in accordance with their arrangement in the Masoretic Psalms is in no way assured. I agree generally with Flint's reconstruction, but cannot support the assertion of a Masoretic arrangement into such impractical, lofty columns. So basically, what I'm saying here is that based on these fragments and based on everything that we know about the ways in which Psalms manuscripts were written and structured, it seems almost certain that this is a copy of Psalms that didn't follow the Masoretic arrangement. More likely, it's probably a copy of, like, it's probably Psalm 26 and Psalm 27, and then Psalms 30 following right after Psalm 27 instead of, material in between. So that's 4Q98. 4Q98A, technically speaking. Now, I also included a few of these texts from Masada. Fragments belonging to two psalm scrolls already mentioned above were discovered in the excavations at Masada in 1963 and 1964. I don't have pictures of these, unfortunately. The
Womp
first
womp.
contains most of, I know, Psalm 81 to 85 in 3 columns, and the second parts of Psalms 147, 18 to 19, and Psalm 150, 1 to 6, on 2 small fragments. Columns in Matsada 1E consist of 29 lines and are 6.3 centimeters wide on average, and comprise a 2-to-1 stichometric arrangement. So that means that there are 2 stanzas or 2 verses of poetic text on each line. That's a 2-to-1 arrangement. Matsada 1F has been reconstructed to a height of 43 to 51 lines per column, which measure 4.23 centimeters wide on average. Now, that's according to Jane. Again, the arrangement of the text in this scroll is prosaic, although individual stikos are separated by small vakats. So there's a space between each individual stiko, but not each individual stiko belongs on its own line. Some of them, will bleed over onto the next line. Both manuscripts have a terminus ad quem before the destruction of Matsada in 67 CE. Nevertheless, the script on both appears more comfortably set in the second half of this century than the first. In addition to these scrolls, mention should also be made of 4Q Deuteronomy Q, which is not a psalm scroll, but it is a scroll containing poetic text. And actually, Vish, do you want to pull up a picture of this one? Because it's a good one to look at to see
Which
exactly
scroll is it?
what I'm getting. 4Q44.
All right, let me do some navigating because you didn't put that on the list.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't. But
Right, 4Q44.
4Q44. These are all easy to find, everyone, on the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls digital library.
Okay. Do you
So
want just, like, the big
there's
chunk, or do you want all the little
yeah.
disparate ones?
No,
Okay.
show the big chunk because that uh will show you exactly what I'm talking about here and why I think it's important to include in this inventory. So you see here, especially the big fragment there on the left hand side. This is the very end of Deuteronomy 32. This is a really important fragment because this preserves the very lengthy expanded text of the end of Deuteronomy 32, which is very different from both the Masoretic text and the Septuagint. So it's really cool. But this is you can see here these really little narrow columns of text because it's arranged with each individual verse on its own line. So this is a small scroll structured into narrow columns that likely contained only Deuteronomy 32. That's the Song of Moses. The scroll is noteworthy as it is one of the only non-Psalms manuscripts that preserves part of a poetical text in very narrow columns. It is dated to the late Hasmonean to the early Herodian period. That's the second half of the first century BCE. And it likely and like many manuscripts where the same text is preserved, it was written stichometrically, but according to a one-to-one arrangement. Columns contained 11 lines. It was 11.4 centimeters tall and measured between 3 to 5.5 centimeters. Also, from among the scrolls I had initially surveyed, um, Murdabat's Isaiah is a single fragment of a scroll that contains text from Isaiah 1 4 to 14 in a narrow column measuring 5.4 centimeters. This is also a post Herodian manuscript in which the text was arranged in a prosaic format. I don't have pictures of that one. I don't know if those
Do
are on
you have
Leon
a
Levy.
translation of this longer ending or different ending?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. Let me
'Cause I'm
oh,
curious, and I know some folks in the chat will be too.
oh, sure. Yeah, this is, I'm just trying to think where, this is, where's the best place to go here? Let's go here. This is,
And while you're pulling that up,
Deuteronomy 32
Tad
verses
gifted 5 memberships to your channel.
wow,
So
thank
thank
you,
you, Tad,
That
very
very
generous.
much. Do we have a list of who the happy recipients of those memberships are? I know
Let's
sometimes
see. We do
people do that.
Brandon
Um,
Runyon, Simone, Triceratops, the weirdo CKA Evan, and tons
Very
of, I
nice.
think, Mice's third wife. They all received gifted memberships so they can use the Mudkip Davis emoji and the other little
Woo!
channel emojis they have. It's pretty sweet.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Tad.
Mhm.
All right. So, um, let's just see here. This is 4Q44. Um, let's make sure I got.
I'm already seeing some Mudkip Davises in the chat.
Excellent.
Yeah, they won't show up on the StreamYard, but
No, they
they
don't, but
are there.
you
So
can tell. So, yeah, this is the text of Deuteronomy 32, verse 43, reads, "O nations, acclaim his people, for he'll avenge the blood of his slaves, wreak vengeance on his foes, and cleanse the land of his people." In this particular manuscript, verse 43 reads, "Rejoice, sky, his people, and bow down to him, all the gods. For the blood of his sons he shall avenge, and vengeance he will return to his adversaries. And for those who hate him, he will completely destroy. And he will the land he will make atonement for the land of his people. So this is a really interesting really interesting text. That's what's in 4Q44.
Very cool.
It's really, really interesting because, and you can hear some of the stuff that has been changed in the Masoretic text, right? Like they've taken out all the mention of Yahweh avenging his sons, avenging the blood of his sons. They've taken out all the mention of the other gods. They've taken out the mention of the sky making the proclamation. Lots of this cosmogonic sort of language that hints at the divine council sort of perspectives is missing from the Masoretic text of Psalm 32, and we have that in 4Q Deuteronomy 4Q 44. It's very cool. So, but interestingly, it's arranged poetically, just like these psalm scrolls were. And this, this raises a question for me as well in terms of how people in antiquity thought of this sort of stuff. Did You'll recall I said that this manuscript 4Q44 is likely one that just contains the Song of Moses, which we have in Deuteronomy 32. So it's not a copy of the book of Deuteronomy, it's just a copy of the Song of Moses. But in the minds of the writers and the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, was this any different from a bunch of these other manuscripts that just contain, one or two or three individual psalms? Are they, in their mind, generically the same sort of thing? In other words, are they, detaching a lot of this material from the ways in which we organize them, as in part of the book of Psalms, as in part of the book of Deuteronomy? For them, it's all just poetry. So, and that's where I think part of this sort of an investigation is really, really helpful.
Real quick question in the chat.
Yes.
How much of the Dead Sea Scrolls are accurately readable with strong confidence of understanding? Without vowels, I estimate 30 to 40% without Masoretic help.
Oh, I'd no, a lot more than that. The vocalization differences in the scrolls, I mean, it doesn't affect a lot. There's a handful of places where it has an impact, but we know with quite a bit of confidence. First of all the scrolls are really legible in infrared, certainly, and the text themselves, even without the vowel pointings, is as we sort of explained at the beginning of the stream here, we have a very good idea what all of these words meant, or even which words they were, even without the vowel points. So it's yeah, I would say probably 90 to 95%. So yeah. All right. Where am I? So finally, let's talk about non-canonical psalms. 4Q380 is a text not recognized by Peter Flint as a psalm scroll, and I think he should have recognized this as a psalm scroll. It should be added to the same list of scrolls that contain very narrow columns. 4Q380 consists of 7 fragments and preserves parts of a previously unknown hymnic collection. It's dated to the mid to late Hasmonean period, that is around the first half of the 1st century BCE, and it was structured into a prosaic format. While there is no way to ascertain the column height from the surviving fragments, we know they contained more than 12 lines and measured an estimated 5 centimeters in width. Each column measured an estimated 5 centimeters in width. This final scroll is especially interesting since it does not contain any evidence for previous known psalms or prayers, and also because the prosaic structure in a narrow column block is a peculiar feature known from only other copies of Masoretic psalms. Based on these codicological criteria, 4Q380 would seem to qualify as a psalmodic collection of some sort, in the same vein as other manuscripts like 4Q84, 4Q86, and 4Q88. And actually, while I'm on that note and while I'm thinking about it, maybe I should just to give you a sense of the flavor of this particular manuscript, maybe let me grab a book here.
All right, I'll read a Lieutenant Matt the Navigator's super chat for 5. Baptist Theology Bro, about to talk your ear off about the true context of the Gospels. What's a Hasmonean?
What's a Hasmonean? So
that's some r/bone apple tea.
That's very nice.
Going on there.
So, let me give you a sense of the flavor of some of these non-canonical psalms. So I'll read from. There's a lot more preserved from non-canonical psalms B, and this is now. It sounds a fair bit like text from the Book of Psalms, but it's quite different. So this is from 4Q381 fragment 1. I proclaimed and I reflected on his wonders, and that shall be for me teaching justice. There's a break here. Something about my mouth, and to the simple, and they shall understand, and to those without heart, in order that they should know Yahweh. How powerful wonders. He made the heavens and the earth with an adjuration, with a word from his mouth. And channels, he enclosed their streams, pools, and every whirlpool, and then there's a break. Something about the night, the stars, and the constellations, and he caused something to shine, and then there's another break. There's mention here of tree and every fruit of the vineyard and all produce of the field, and according to his word, and then a break. And by his spirit, he appointed them to rule over all these on the earth. So it sounds like this is a psalm of creation. It sounds like it's now reflecting on the creation of the man and the woman, Adam and Eve. He appointed them to rule over all these on the earth, and in all something, month by month, feast by feast, day by day, to eat its fruit, probably the fruit of the tree of the fruit of the tree of life, and the birds and all that is theirs, to eat the best of everything. And also, and then there's a break, and it mentions creeping things among them, and all the hosts will fill the earth, and to serve man and to help him. And so that's like, they're clearly very similar to, lots of things that we read in the Book of Psalms, but texts that no one had ever seen before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I think this particular manuscript, both 4Q380 and 4Q381 should be included as so-called Psalm scrolls, because that's what they contain. They contain Psalms. Even though we don't recognize them from anything in the book of Psalms, they're still Psalms. So, yeah, and especially in view of this observation at the end here, right? The narrow column block of this particular manuscript, 4Q380, is significant because we only know this from these other texts in the book of Psalms. And well, we saw it from within a prosaic format. We only know it from the book of Psalms. So that's these narrow little columns, but which are not stichometrically arranged. That's something that we only see in other manuscripts that contain material from the book of Psalms. All right.
Real
Let's talk
quick,
about
just a
stichometry
super chat.
after this super chat.
Yes. We have a copy editor here. It's between and, not between and to.
Oh,
From
what did
from
I
Evan,
what did
who
I
gets
do?
paid to do this. Earlier in
Oh.
the stream, you were saying it's between this many centimeters to
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah,
many,
yeah.
and
Okay.
Evan was
Thank you
losing their
for the
mind.
correction. I'm
I
sorry.
tried not to grit my teeth, but I was also feeling a little about it. So, just copy editor stuff.
All right.
Good old English.
Thanks for the correction. I will make a note of that for my future work on this kind of stuff too, because I'm sure that is not a
This is
mistake
one of those
I've made
Satan
just
is
the
not a
one
pogo
time.
stick type things that would get you at SBL, like someone stands up at your paper
Yeah.
and just goes,
Right.
that's the wrong.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about stichometry. Emmanuel Tove points to 30 manuscripts that you see on the screen here from the Judean desert that are structured in a stichographic or a stichometric arrangement. So these are scrolls that were written in a system of strict parallelismus membrorum. Sorry, parallelismus parallelismus membrorum in the Latin,
Which
and
being
mostly
translated means?
I don't know. I don't know Latin. It's like parallel verses. Uh
Why didn't they just say
and
that? Why can't people just
I
use
don't right, yeah, it's dumb.
plain language?
Thanks, Emmanuel Tove. And mostly which
Well,
contain
Tove, let it slide.
I mean, one of the most, one of the most brilliant uh text critical scholars of
Yeah, I
our
think we can give Tove
generation,
a
of our
pass.
age. Yeah. So doesn't mean he's immune from being annoying. Okay.
That's true.
So, and mostly which contain poetical books from the Hebrew Bible. That is Job, Proverbs, and Psalms. Some songs from the Torah, and most notably the Song of the Sea, the Song of Moses, and the Song of Devorah, and the acrostics in Lamentations 1-4. So the practice of stichometry would seem to point towards a performative function for these manuscripts. But this is not certain in the light of numerous non-stichometrically arranged texts, such as 11Q Psalms A, that are very reasonably likewise performative. The distinction of these books as rather exclusively scriptural is an important point for Tove. He says the fact that the song in Exodus 15 in 4Q reworked Pentateuch C, a rewritten Bible composition, is written in a special layout may imply that the scribe considered this composition a biblical text. So far, the only known exception is the non-biblical 4Q Messianic Apocalypse, that's 4Q 521. That Ben Sira was included in this group probably implies that this book was considered to be biblical, not necessarily by the Qumran community, but by the scribes of 2Q Sirach and Matzada Sirach. We have copies of the book of Ben Sira written in Hebrew from Qumran Cave 2, as well as from Matzada. So what he's saying here is that this idea of arranging text stichometrically is something that he thinks should be restricted to only scriptural compositions. That this is a sign that whoever copied this particular manuscript considered the text authoritative if they're writing things out stichometrically.
Hmm.
It's an
I don't know
interesting
about that.
thought. I also don't know about that. So for the purposes of this study, I've noted 3 types of stichometry and designated between them according to either a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 arrangement or as acrostics. That is, columns arranged with 1 or 2 sticos per line, and those that follow an acrostic structure with an established number of stanzas per line of text. The above inventory includes 4 texts that are structured prosaically, 3 that are structured stichometrically in a 1-to-1 format, 1 in a 2-to-1 format, and 1 that appears to be partly prosaic and partly stichometric in a 1-to-1 arrangement. 4Q90 is the only copy from the list of Psalm 119. Unlike Tove, for whom this acrostic poem serves as the prime example of stichometry, the common tendency for this psalm to appear in the same acrostic structure that exhibits a considerable variance in length between individual stanzas precludes it from further consideration in my own investigation. So I'm ignoring Psalm 119. The controlling factor for the structure of these texts is the length of the individual stanzas and not something more physically arbitrary. Since only the late Masada 1e is structured in a 2-to-1 arrangement, this text seems also to be something of an outlier from this inventory. By far, the most significant statistic is the higher distribution of text between either a prosaic structure or a 1-to-1 stichometric arrangement. Indeed, the latter grouping lends itself very naturally to narrow columns, since individual stikos in Hebrew poetry very commonly consist of only several words. 3 words, very often, sometimes no more than 4 words. With that in mind, it ought to be further noted that for those 3 manuscripts which are structured in a 1-to-1 arrangement, all of the extant individual stikos are indeed quite short. In her description of 4Q380, Eileen Schuler noted that its narrow structure suggests a concern for stichometric arrangement, likely reminiscent of the 1-to-1 stichometric arrangement exemplified in 4Q84, 4Q86, and 4Q93. It is worth mentioning that 4Q380 is a scroll that Tove drew attention to for the absence of this special arrangement of poetical units known almost exclusively for biblical texts. So for Tove, he's actually eliminating 4Q380 as a quote unquote biblical text because it doesn't have any stichometric arrangement. I would also beg to differ on this point. But for this manuscript and 3 additional scrolls, 4Q88, 4Q98a, and Matsada 1f, the very narrow columns present a stark outlier from the more traditional arrangement of other prosaically structured texts, including the many other poetical texts that are not arranged stichometrically. Careful attention should also be paid to one of the earliest of the above mentioned scrolls, 4Q86, from the mid to late Hasmonean period. This scroll contains a mixed arrangement between prosaically structured stanzas and others in a 1-to-1 stichometric format. Curiously, the shift in structure within 4Q86 takes place within a single psalm. The transition is unpreserved at some point between Psalm 104, verse 12 to 14. Flint says regarding this peculiar combination of formats that it is difficult to explain, and further muses that the phenomenon may actually point to the existence of 2 separate manuscripts from the collection of fragments, since none of the individual fragments preserve evidence of both prosaic and stichometric arrangements. The color, condition, and patterns of wear and damage on the 4Q86 fragments strongly suggests that they do in fact belong to the same scroll. In addition, Flint's reconstruction, coupled with the close correspondence of line spacing and column block measurements, practically confirms that this is not the case, and that the phenomenon here, where the transition between prosaic and stichometric structure within Psalm 104 is indeed probable. Hey, do you want to pull up that text? I know I'm doing this to you again. I'm sorry. You've got Sephardia open, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to put that up? Let's look at this. Let's look at Psalm
Which
104.
okay, Psalm
Psalm
104.
104. And let's
Alright,
look at
let me get that
verses.
open.
Well, let's read the whole thing. And try and
Okay.
think in our heads where or even why there might be this shift from a prosaic arrangement to a stichometric arrangement. All right, so let's read here. Bless the Eternal One, O my soul, the Eternal One, my God. You're going to make take the cantillation out.
Yeah,
You're going
it's
to make it,
I don't like
embiggen it.
just casually reading it with the
Yeah,
cancellation marks.
yeah. No, I agree. Okay.
Okay.
You are very great. You are clothed in glory and majesty, wrapped in a robe of light. You spread the heavens like a tent cloth. You set the rafters of the heavenly lofts in the waters, making the clouds a chariot, moving on the wings of the wind. You make messengers of the winds, servants of fiery flames. You establish the earth on its foundations, so that it shall never totter. You made the deep cover it. You made the deep cover it as a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. They fled at your blast, rushed away at the sound of your thunder. Mountains rising, valleys sinking to the place you established them. You set bounds they must not pass, so that they never again cover the earth. You make springs gush forth in torrents. They make their way between the hills. Okay. Now, at some point after verse 11 here, some point between verse 12 to verse 14, there's a transition in 4Q86 from the prosaic arrangement to the stichometric arrangement. I wonder if there's anything within the psalm that could give us a clue as to where this takes place and why. So keep thinking about that. Is there anything that shifts between verses 12 to 14 which might create this change in the mind of the scribes? Verse 11, giving drink to all the wild beasts, the wild asses slake their thirst. The birds of the sky dwell beside them and sing among the foliage. You water the mountains from your lofts. The earth is sated from the fruit of your work. You make the grass grow for the cattle and herbage for the humans. Labor that they may get food out of the earth. Wine that cheers human hearts. Oil that makes the face shine. And bread that sustains human life. What do you
It
think?
shifted pretty obviously from referring to, like, the
The
flood
animals?
narrative to,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is what God is doing now
Yeah,
or
yeah.
continuously."
I think so too. I think so too. So I think that's right at the beginning of verse 12, I think, isn't it? You wanna go back
Yeah,
up and look?
13.
Yeah. Verse
But
13.
also it's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Given
10
towards all the
even,
wild beasts of Wild's Lake. Yeah.
but it's like
Interesting.
half of
10,
11.
11, and then 12, birds of the sky and the fall. So I think, yeah, in my mind, it probably, the shift probably occurs between verse 12 and verse 13 would be my guess.
It's also just like,
Uh,
hey, this whole thing is talking about, like, oh, God has power over the elements and the forces of
yep.
nature, and this is what, narratively God did back then, and this is what he's doing now, da, da, da. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right.
yeah.
Good. Well, let's I'll continue reading here. Okay. We're moving on from stichometry to talk about the patterns of arrangement and content. A question that is at the forefront of this analysis is whether the feature of narrow column structure is peculiar to manuscripts containing material from the Psalms, or whether this is extended to include other texts. Or, you know, another way of putting this is, if this is a feature that's peculiar to just Psalms, can we also call these other texts where this feature appears Psalms? This question will help to determine the degree to which collections of Psalms can be grouped as such codicilogically, or if there are specific contents within these manuscripts that belong to a more dynamic set of texts. I've already noted this for the small-sized 4Q44, which likely contained only the Song of Moses in a stichometric format, the Modabot 3 fragment of Isaiah, and for 4Q380, itself another collection of Psalms, but intriguingly, one that is not stichometrically structured. From among the very large quantities of manuscripts containing hymns and poetical prayers, our attention is straightwise drawn to the Chodayot manuscripts. That's 1QHA, 4QH A to F, that's 4Q427 to 4Q432, and also should fall on other texts, such as festival prayers, that's 1Q34, 4Q508, and 4Q509, 4Q Berchot, A to E, that's 4Q286 to 4Q290, Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice, 4Q400 to 407, as well as the one copy from Matzadah, 4Q Barki Nafshi, that's 4Q434 to 4Q438, the Apocryphal Psalms and Prayer, that's 4Q488, 4Q448, and Shirot A and B, which is 4Q510 and 511, and so forth. However, the available information derived from the surviving fragments of all of these manuscripts shows a relative consistency in their construction that I would characterize as generally prosaic and seemingly controlled by sheet dimensions. So in all of these other manuscripts that I've just mentioned, it doesn't seem like the scribe is paying any attention to the poetical arrangement in his structuring of the text. He's just following his text from the beginning of the line to the end of the line and continuing with the following line. And this is controlled by the size of the manuscript that he's working with. In other words, unlike the selection of Psalms manuscripts featured in this study, all of these other scrolls are much closer to the common tendency within the Qumran scrolls for columnar structure. Having said that, two partially preserved columns in the aforementioned copy of the Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice from Matzadah were reconstructed to a width of about 32 letter spaces, or around 8 centimeters. This would seem to conform to the preference for narrower column dimensions among the Psalm scrolls, but also corresponds to a general tendency in the post-Herodian period for manuscript structure. So something that I've observed elsewhere is that later in time, after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple, towards the middle even of the second century, or of the first century CE, it seems like there's this movement among scribal schools to start structuring all their manuscripts in these narrower columns, higher and narrower columns. This would seem to conform to, unfortunately, a large number of specimens that we might consider in this investigation are simply too fragmentary, and for which not enough information about column structure can be derived. Nevertheless, and despite this gap in our data set, it would seem that the isolation of scrolls containing Psalms, according to a specialized columnar composition, is indeed worthy of some further attention. All the available evidence seems to suggest that these specific poetical collections of texts were occasionally formatted into narrow columns in both one-to-one stichometric and prosaic arrangements. So, first of all, let's talk about scroll size. There is a small range in the extent and reconstructed size of all of the manuscripts featured in this study, but not to such a degree that would invalidate their qualification as part of a grouping. Significantly, while the only so-called non-Psalms manuscript featured thus far, the Song of Moses scroll 4Q44, is a small document which very likely only contained a single hymn. 7 of the 8 other manuscripts in our inventory show evidence of collections, that is, containing more than one individual song. The only exception is 4Q93, which quite possibly contained only Psalm 104. This conjecture would also include 4Q380, which has been argued persuasively by Eileen Schuler to have contained multiple psalms that were collected on the basis of their connection to respected biblical prophets. With that in mind, while most of the manuscripts in our inventory are not large, deluxe scrolls, neither are they to be reckoned among the smallest of those that appear in Tov's tabulation of Judean desert scrolls by column height. So 4Q93 also contains the lowest column block from the beginning, consisting of 15 lines and measuring an estimated 15.4 centimeters. Of the other scrolls which contain multiple psalms and for which column heights can be estimated, most fall within the range of 17 to 23 lines, and these are all in the neighborhood of about 15 centimeters in height. These figures are close to Tov's estimation of the average size for the Qumran scrolls. We should have every expectation that 4Q380 fit these same parameters. The 2 copies of Psalms from Matzara are the largest of the group, and the former was included by Tov as a member of his category of deluxe editions. Columns in Matzara 1E contain 29 lines, and those in Matzara 1F probably more than 40 lines. Because all but one of the featured scrolls contain previously known text from the Book of Psalms, reconstruction for most of them is generally possible. Flint has managed to posit multiple runs of consecutive columns for 3 of the manuscripts. He has estimated that 4Q84 contained 36 columns, 26 of which are at least preserved in succession. Jane has suggested a scroll of 40 columns, measuring about 2 meters in length. The fragments in 4Q86 survive from 4 or 5 consecutive columns, and Jane has suggested that the scroll contained probably 19 columns. For 4Q88, Flint has demonstrated the existence of at least 11 columns of text, 10 of which he has reconstructed in a sequence. According to Schuler, 4Q380 contained at least 5 psalms. Both of the manuscripts of Matzada appear to have been large scrolls, likely containing a sizable number of psalms. I've got a note here. I think, yeah. So Peter Flint suggested that the presence of a possible blank column following Psalm 150 in Matzada 1F suggests for him that this manuscript is clear evidence for the existence of a Masoretic Psalter in the late Second Temple period. So even though there's only a few fragments from this one manuscript, because of its physical structuring, he thinks it contained all 150 psalms, and it ended with
Mm,
Psalm 150.
I don't know
So,
about that.
uh, I also don't know about that. I think possibly, but I just, yeah, it's just, it's not enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do with Psalm 151?
Well, it
You
was a
know?
manuscript that just didn't have it. So,
Hmm.
um, but that's, that's part of the exciting stuff about what's going on with the Psalms in this period between like the 1st century BC and the 1st century CE is there doesn't seem to have been any set structure, any set individual book of Psalms. There were all sorts of different ways that Psalms were circulated. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward here.
I mean,
Um,
that was something that I asked you about sometime, I think last summer, was the difference between the Ashrei Psalm as we have it and
Mm.
typically recite it versus,
Yeah.
the one that you find, which is obviously call and response liturgical in the
Yeah.
Dead Sea Scrolls, which I still think is cool as hell.
Very
So,
cool. Yeah, no, it's there's lots and lots of variety. So, the existence of several scrolls which contain multiple individual psalms, but all arranged according to this very narrow columnar format, indicates that this structural feature is not a requisite part of their construction that was necessarily controlled by their size, and rather helps to confirm the possibility that this is a codicological pattern that was tied to their content or function. So, these because these particular Psalms manuscripts appear with these narrow columns, whether they were stichometrically arranged or prosaically arranged, suggests that this is a feature of a particular genre of text, and it's not based on the size of the manuscript that they were copied on. In other words, while most of these scrolls were clearly not psalters, I have in air quotes here, or in scare quotes when it's written, air quotes with my fingers when I'm speaking. Um, while most of these scrolls were not clearly psalters, like the exquisite specimens 4Q Psalms A and 11Q Psalms A, they were smaller collections of some sort, but collections nevertheless. The fact that these appear in collections, I think, is really significant. Second, let's talk about date. The scrolls in our inventory range in date from the first half of the first century BCE, that would be 4Q 380, to the second half of the first century CE. No, and that would be the two manuscripts from Matsuda. Now, note also that it's the non-canonical Psalms text that is also our oldest of these manuscripts. The two earliest manuscripts both contain psalms structured in a prosaic format, and the aforementioned transition from prose to a stichometric one-to-one arrangement in 4Q86 may provide an important clue about the narrow columnar phenomenon. 4Q88 from the mid first century BCE is also not stichometrically arranged, as was the highly fragmentary 4Q98A from around the late first century BCE to the mid first century CE. So outside of the acrostic hymn in 4Q, outside of the acrostic hymn, Psalm 119, preserved in 4Q90, 4Q84, and 4Q93, which are both dated to the second half of the first century BCE, stand as the only entirely one-to-one stichometric texts from the Dead Sea Scrolls in the group. The diachronic arrangement of the manuscripts is perhaps noteworthy, especially when factored against observations about stichometry from the Qumran scrolls more generally. Tove, Tove's list of stichometric texts contains 6 scrolls exhibiting an acrostic arrangement, 5 comprising Psalm 119, and a 6th copy of Psalm 112. 3 manuscripts, that is 1Q Isaiah A, where column 50, lines 8 through 17 are um are stichometrically arranged. Um sorry, is that on my, yeah, okay, yeah, these are the texts in red right now. Um, 4Q reworked Pentateuch C and 5Q Beatitudes contain sections of text that are prosaically arranged, but individual sticos are separated by small inline vackets. So the individual poetical stanzas are separated by like these small inline breaks, usually consisting of like 5 to 6 letter spaces or measuring about a centimeter, maybe a centimeter and a half on a line. 6 or 7 of these manuscripts appear with text in a one-to-one stichometric arrangement. You see those listed there in red, and between 10 to 12 in a 2-to-1 arrangement. Now, significantly, the diachronic distribution of the former is noticeably earlier than the latter. Up to the Herodian period, the 2-to-1 arrangement accounts for only 3 of 13 scrolls, whereas from 30 BCE to the 2nd century, 9 of the 13 manuscripts contain text structured in a 2-to-1 arrangement. In fact, in all manuscripts dated after 30 CE, the 1-to-1 arrangement appears in only 2 of the 8 manuscripts, that's 4Q84 and 4Q93. So the pattern appears to correspond to what we observe of the Psalm scrolls structured into narrow columns. Stichometry looks to be a structural development that gained prominence over the course of time and then gradually became popularized from a 1-to-1 into a 2-to-1 arrangement. Given the predominance of Psalm scrolls that appear prosaically structured in narrow columns, and also in the light of an evident transition from prosaic to stichometric structure in 4Q86, I would posit that the narrow columnar format in these scrolls reflects this development. One possibility that should be considered for those prosaically structured texts in narrow columns is that they also contained stichometric psalms arranged in a 1-to-1 format that elsewhere was not preserved. So this is one of the big claims in this paper for me, is that in these manuscripts where you see these narrow columns that are not stichometrically arranged, I think it's very possible that the reason for that is because there's other text that's not preserved, that we don't have, that actually was stichometrically arranged. And it's that stichometric arrangement that is controlling the ways in which the scribes are structuring all the columns of the text. Whether they're writing it stichometrically or in a prosaic format, they're still sticking to these narrow columns. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Or are you listening?
I
Maybe you
am
stop.
listening.
Okay. So, yeah. So that's I in other words, so what I'm trying to illustrate here, as I mentioned, is that I think we can observe patterns of stichometry over time. And it's something that's also, I think, fairly recent. Something that was happening, in the 1st century BC and into the 1st century CE. Okay. Content. It is widely recognized that the Masoretic Psalms are comprised of smaller collections that are reflected in different arrangements in the Second Temple manuscripts, and which attest to the development of the Book of Psalms in later years. So, Peter Flint has argued that there were 2 stages of what he calls stabilization in the Book of Psalms evident in the Qumran scrolls. The first is the fixation of Psalms 1 through 89, which most scholars will say occur in 3 individual collections, books 1 to 3. And he says this took place sometime before the 1st century BCE. But Psalms 90 through 150, so that's all the material in books 4 and 5, existed in much more fluid collections until near the end of the 1st century CE. In the texts that survive and show evidence of collections in our inventory, 3 out of 7 of these manuscripts contain only psalms from books 4 and 5. That's 4Q84, 4Q86, and Matzah 1F. Added to this is 4Q380, which does not preserve any previous known psalms, and 4Q88, which includes a pair of fragments containing Psalm 22, verses 14 to 17, but is predominantly comprised of psalms from Book 4, as well as the Apostrophe of Zion, the Eschatological Hymn, and the Apostrophe of Judah. The highly fragmentary 4Q98A is the only manuscript from the group that contains just text from Book 1. And that's Psalms 26, verses 7 to 12, 27, verse 1, and 30, verse 9 to 13. You'll recall this is the one that Peter Flint suggested could be as many as 60 lines in the column, which is pretty silly, I think.
Mm.
The most interesting manuscripts of this group are the oldest ones: 4Q84, 4Q86, 4Q88, and 4Q380, because they also reflect the predominant theory regarding the development of the Book of Psalms in two stages. Since most of the contents of the three of these manuscripts correspond to thoughts about the lack of fixity among the Psalms in books 4 to 5, it is perhaps not surprising to see a possible pattern of this instability in the contents of the featured group of texts. These smaller collections show a variability that aligns with what we infer as bibliographic fluidity, but which is more appropriately an indication of the dynamic usage and function of individual psalms in the Second Temple period. So basically, because of the wide variety of contextual usages for psalms, I think that helps to explains why there's so much variety in terms of how they appear from books 4 to 5. The
That's
inclusion of 4Q.
something that's something that just clicked for me is, going back to the Ashray,
Mm,
is seeing it on, the manuscript. It's just prose, there's no real line breaks or anything,
yeah.
and that was
Mhm.
almost impossible for me to parse, and I didn't notice the, refrain until I went back in and added my own, I guess, stichometry there and rearranged it, and I
Right,
went, "Oh my
yeah.
god, this is call and response, this is liturgical," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "But they didn't write it on the scroll that way, like, what the heck?"
Yeah. Right? So but that's probably functional, right? At least
Mhm.
for that particular manuscript, maybe it's not call and
'Cause the
response.
people,
Uh,
obviously, in that community wouldn't need to see it, so it doesn't really matter how
well,
it
that
looks
too.
to them,
That's also
you
true.
know?
Yeah. So, yeah. No, that's good.
Mm.
Okay. The inclusion of 4Q380, along with at least these other four manuscripts, would make very good sense if we see it in parallel as a specialized collection of individual psalms. 4Q88 provides a good example of such a collection, which contains so-called biblical and non-biblical psalms together, and which has been argued by Jane to have functioned as a sort of sectarian proclamation of hope in times of distress. Moreover, if this study helps to refine our view of psalms as more nondescriptly spiritualized songs as opposed to hymns imbued with a qualitative sense of authority that's beholden to the Masoretic Psalms, this should catalyze an evaluation of some of these other texts, such as the fragmentary remains of Psalms 26, 27, and 30 in 4Q98a, free from the tyranny of a biblical hegemony. In other words, while 4Q98a does not invalidate the existence of an early stabilized collection of Psalms 1 through 89, neither does it offer much support for it. Based on its close structural compatibility with these several other small and diverse collections, it is more appropriately also to be considered among a specialized grouping of individual psalms with no certain connection to the existence of a scriptural book of psalms proper. So I think that at the time when the Dead Sea Scrolls were being written and collected, in especially the 1st century BCE through to the 1st century CE, I don't think we have a copy of the Masoretic Psalter. I don't think
Mm.
so. Um, I think we have this huge variety of collections of psalms for different purposes, to function in different circumstances for different people and for different communities, and that there just was no real standardization for what constituted a psalm from other poetical texts. It seems pretty fluid to me. And I think the ways in which some of these psalms that exist in these narrow columns helps us to see and to understand this. All right. I've got a paragraph of conclusions here.
Okay.
So I've undertaken a codicological analysis of a specific set of poetical or hymnic texts from the Judean desert that appear in an atypical narrow columnar format. These manuscripts have largely been designated psalm scrolls because they almost universally contain texts that were collected together in later periods as part of the Book of Psalms. However, the inclusion of 4Q380 within this group would seem to show either that the Psalms in this text were not so distinct from the so-called biblical Psalms, or that the Masoretic Psalms themselves were not in a class of their own. Although this grouping of scrolls is distinct from other poetical texts, including compositions like the Chorayot, Festival of Prayers, and Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice, it does not follow that their distinction was necessarily a product of authority. Several of the scrolls featured in this group have been shown to be small collections of individual psalms, and the admixture of structure within them between a one-to-one stichometric and prosaic arrangements also suggests that their narrow columnar format is possibly a reflection of the development of stichometry in the Second Temple Jewish scribal practices. Given the possible relationship between narrow columns and stichometry, there are also likely to be further implications with regards to Tov's connection of the phenomenon exclusively to biblical texts. While there does not appear to be much consistency in the content of these manuscripts beyond their generic peculiarity as psalms, this short exercise hopefully reveals that our examinations of manuscripts should proceed past considerations only of text. Scrolls are more than mere text containers. They are themselves functional objects whose purpose sometimes extend well beyond what they contain. In this case, the conformity of these psalms to a specific set of scribal principles points to a significant usage, a purpose, or a set of collecting criteria at work for a selection of writings that are quite frequently uncontained. So that's it.
Very cool.
That's Psalm Scrolls from K4. Um what counts as a psalm scroll? What counts as poetical or as hymnic? Like, I think
The
these are
short answer
all
is,
questions, right? Exactly. That's the short answer. I don't know. I think
much
it's
to Emmanuel
that's
Toe's chagrin.
much to his chagrin. But this is one of the things I appreciate so much about Emmanuel. Um is that Professor Tove has just written so much in the first place.
Mhm.
Just so many so much important stuff that he's penned, that he's written. And so of course, because he's one of the most prominent figures in the field too, tons of people are interacting with his stuff all the time.
Mm.
There's lots of people who are hugely critical of Tova's work, but I don't think there's anybody anywhere that's more gracious in how he just,
Yeah.
accepts the criticism and rolls with it and will
Mhm.
correct himself as a result
Yeah.
of that. He is always when you interact with him in person, and you'll encounter lots and lots of from younger scholars, the same sorts of testimonials as mine, where
Mhm.
he listens to, like, I mean,
Yeah.
he's in his 80s. He's been doing this for since
Probably most of his life.
before I've been like I was in high school,
Yeah.
right? And when young scholars, and I don't really consider, even though in my head I'm still a young scholar, but I'm probably not so much anymore. But like when I was in my 20s and my 30s, and when you talk to
Mm.
lots of my contemporaries when they were in their 20s and 30s, and still, young scholars today who are in their 20s and 30s, when they talk to him, when they interact with him, when they write stuff, he listens
Yeah.
and
And that
he
to me was
adjusts the way.
really
Yeah,
impressed by him, when I listened to him at SBL, is that that kind of humility is really what you
yeah,
want in a scholar, just in general. It's like, "Hey, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I've been doing this a long time," but he's like, I don't know everything. I don't think of everything." And when he listens to people that are new to the field or not as widely published, he acknowledges like, "Hey, they may have thought of something or noticed something that I didn't." And I was really impressed by that. I didn't find him to be intimidating or arrogant at all, so I
not
was
at
really
all.
grateful for him having that
Yeah.
kind of demeanor, so
Yeah, no, he's just, he's just a remarkable person, um,
Mm.
within the guild, and I'll just like, in my own, like, I got to know him, working on the, Dead Sea Scrolls at the Museum of the Bible. He kinda knew who I was before that, but not really well. He knew me well enough to, know my name and attach it to a face, right? Like, that was about it. Um, After I started working with him, though, it was around the same time that my first book was published. Um,
the Brill one that no one
yeah,
can get
the
because
the
it's so
Braille one,
expensive.
the one, that's the one, as you
Kip
know.
Davis has written Nope.
I did a birthday stream all about that last year.
You
You guys can check that out. I'll be doing another one, next month. I'm
excellent.
starting to think about it, and this is something I'm gonna do every year is, I'm gonna talk about a dissertation, uh,
Nice.
on my birthday. I just have to
Very
pick one
cool.
and figure out what. But that was last year I talked about mine. So, but yeah, that first book was published right around the same time I started working with Tove, and he sent me an email, and it's so fun. The way he sent me an email, one day, and he says, I read this last week. I picked up and I read this book, uh, by this title, by this young scholar. He says, and it's very good. And
Awesome.
I've adjusted some of the way that I'm thinking about some of these things. He says as a result,
Hell
but
yeah.
that's the kind of guy he was, right? He is.
Made it.
Sorry, he's still with us.
Yeah.
But he just yeah, a massively encouraging, supporting
And
figure
it's
for
so easy
scholars.
to do things like that. It's so simple. Doesn't cost anything to be kind and to encourage somebody. So, shout out to, Professor Tove.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to Professor.
Okay, a
So
couple of
yeah,
things from the chat. Tree clam tad for 2. Oh no, it's Psalms all the way down.
nice.
Um, appreciation of the mods, y'all are kept busy
Really?
today. It was only 2
See,
people.
oh, okay. I advertised this stream to Vish as a drama-free stream.
Well, I mean, look, it was just one guy initially and then another guy with a bunch of sock
Okay.
accounts, and it's fine.
All right. Thanks.
Digital Hammurabi, get over yourself, Dr. Kip. You can't even figure out the artistic patterns of footwear on ancient poltergeists. And there's the smoking gun.
What you generally see if you see a ghost in a setting like that is some guy in Western gear. Now, ironically, 90% of people who see ghosts never see shoes or feet. It's very strange. Unless they're a person who's really into the fashion industry and is obsessed with shoes, you never see feet or shoes on a ghost. Okay, so it's like 90% of people never see shoes or feet on a ghost.
Or unless they have
In
a foot
my
fetish.
experience, Fish, this is true though. I have never seen shoes on a ghost.
Well, all right.
Prove me
Ad for
wrong, chat.
$2. I can't promise my firstborn to grow,
No,
Kip.
no, and nobody is nobody is asking you to do that. You know what I should do? I should just put I should just put the book up on my academia page or
You could
make it publicly available
make it
because
easily accessible.
yeah, I think I should do that. Now that you can't get it anymore even for free as near as
Yeah.
I can tell. So which is very unfortunate. But yeah. Okay. So it's rounding out to about 4:20. In 40 minutes, I've got to be on the deck of the USS Kongzi for another episode
Woohoo!
of Star Trek Endurance, which
Playing
is fun.
games.
I believe we are playing with a full house this week. We missed last week.
Excellent.
So
Do you have the
Prixie asks, will
stream?
Brill be mad at you if you do that? I don't know.
I don't know. Do you have this stream automatically redirecting people so they can watch the game?
Have the stream automatically redirecting people to the game. So we'll probably finish about 30 minutes before it starts, but that's where it's redirecting to. I recommend people go and check it out. Oh yeah. If ghosts don't have feet, explain those foot. Maybe you just can't see the feet.
True.
Maybe.
We don't know.
That's what he said. You never see feet.
Didn't say they didn't have them.
You didn't say you didn't have them. Yeah.
Okay.
So, very interesting.
Determined.
No, yeah, don't guys, please don't. Goddamn, don't.
If we thought that you would get a significant enough cut of the profit from it, it would be less of a thing. But
yeah, so yeah, don't do that. It's I don't recommend it.
Plus, I know like most scholars I found are more than happy to share their work with you if you just reach out to them directly because they really want people to read and learn and stuff like this.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation to be in, right? Because I mean, we depend on the academic publishers to get we need Brill to publish the academic work it does. And I don't know if you ever take a minute to browse their catalog, you will quickly discover that holy shit, Brill publishes a fuck ton of stuff, like hundreds and hundreds of books every year.
Yeah,
like just
but it's
so
also
many.
Like, most people don't have the budget of an institution.
No, and it's not the only. And so here's why, right? Like my book did the first print run of my book was 150 copies. And most of those,
oh my God,
that's it. And then I believe they did do a second print run, and it was after the second print run that I actually started earning. You don't even earn royalties on the first 150 because like that's it. All they're doing is recouping the cost of printing and editing at that point. And that's why the price is so high, because the only ones that they sell are to universities that have subscriptions to series of material. So didn't come here for sorry for that. I know
Was spiritual fetishism the real biblical scholarship all along?
I know that's not why you guys are here. I know why you're here.
I'm not telling people why to show up.
But I think most people are here.
So when you say the book of Isaiah is intact, How similar is it to the book of Isaiah that's in the Bible?
So that one is fascinating. So this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but when we discovered the Great Isaiah Scroll, previous to that, the earliest copy of Isaiah that we had was in the Masoretic text, which is in the Middle Ages.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was literally 1,000 years. We literally pushed back our understanding of Isaiah 1,000 years. And the thing that really shocked scholars, like I said, this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but one of the things that shocked them about Isaiah was that it was word for word identical to the Masoretic text.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
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 Anyway.
Word for word. Yeah. So yeah, that's but I'm just happy people showed up. I know these sort of technical nerdy academic streams can be difficult to get into. So I'm just happy that there's still over 70 people watching, which is
Enough for a
pretty great.
Sanhedrin.
Yeah, right. So I mean, when I give papers in academic settings, there's never that many people watching. So it's
Take that,
it's nice.
SBL.
It's very nice. Yes, take that, SBL. So all right. Let's wrap this up. What do you have coming up, Vish?
Just trying to get back into the rhythm of things, slowly but surely. Resorting and unpacking my life again. I hate moving. It is quite literally one of the worst things I've ever done.
It's hell. It is.
It
It's
really
the worst
is.
of all the things.
Oh my God.
It
Ugh.
really is. I
Oof.
dread it. I hate it so much. So I feel it. I feel you. But you and I will be back on Dapper Dinosaur's channel tomorrow.
That's
Saturday,
the plan.
right? Tomorrow's Saturday. Yeah. So
Mhm.
that's pretty awesome that that you're going to be back, because I had to hang out with Dapper and
With Chesh.
and Chet. It was great. It was great. It was awesome. It
Canadian.
was actually really, really cool, because it was just, wall-to-wall Canadian content, which is good, and it drove Dapper crazy. So I'm, that was all right. That was not so bad.
Yes,
But thank God you're gonna be
noting the SBL Press does print on demand stuff that is not as expensive as Berlin or Seebeck. So they also have an ever-growing open access library.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
The cost of joining the SBL is actually pretty small compared to a lot of societal memberships. It's almost, I would say, just under half of what it costs me to renew my Genealogical Society membership every year.
And they do it too. SBL is nice in that there are several tiers of payment, but you don't it's not like tiers of, you get access to everything,
Yeah,
no
you get
matter how
access
much
to everything.
you pay. But
Students,
they
professors,
recognize that
institutions,
there's
independent
lots,
scholars.
yeah,
Mhm.
they recognize there's lots of
So
poor people out there, so they're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they'll give
All
you a
right,
break.
Lieutenant Matt the Navigator
Thanks.
for 5. What's really fun is backing the U-Haul into a car while moving. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything.
Oh God. Wow.
Yeah.
It's or having your moving truck break down when you're returning it. I've, a friend of mine recently went through that. So good times. But I'm psyched that you'll be back tomorrow, Vish, with Dapper and me. I'm very happy you were back today. This was good. So I have before Dapper show tomorrow, I will be making an appearance on Blasphemer's Bible on our
nice
channel tomorrow. The reason why is because they're going to be covering Psalm 22. And I don't know if you know, but there's some pretty significant stuff happening with regards to Psalm 22 in the Dead Sea
where
Scrolls.
I stand on that.
I think most people misunderstand badly the
Yeah.
evidence from Qumran. I've made a video. I've talked about this other places before, but I'll be giving oh god. Yeah, today's the okay. So Dave, you need to let me know what happened because I kind of turned things. I know it's the trade deadline. Today's the NHL trade deadline, guys. Um so I have not been paying attention. I was just going to catch up afterwards, but now Dave, you need to let me know what has happened and I can give you my live reaction. So but that's tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock Pacific, noon Eastern.
And
Blasphemer's Bible, and we'll talk about Psalm 22, and then oh, there we go. I just said it. 9
yeah.
o'clock East, 9 o'clock Pacific, noon Eastern. I should just stop looking at the chat. So, but if Dave tells you what happens to Kadri, please make sure you keep an eye open for that, Vish. So that's tomorrow morning, and then I'll be on Dapper's show in the afternoon, and then we'll be back for Budget Scripture Saturday tomorrow night
Yeah.
with Eddie and with Dr. Tapioca Weasel at 7 o'clock
Nice.
Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. It's gonna be super fun. Oh my god. The show 2 weeks ago was amazing. If you didn't watch it, you should absolutely check it out because it was so good. It's hard to one up them when they happen like that. Oh no, he says he's still working. Shit. I have to go.
Anyway,
I have to go look for
let's
myself.
get
But
out of
anyways,
here.
yeah. So a couple more things though. On that I want to announce. I'm currently working through editing a video that I did with Dr. Joshua Bowen and Dr. Christy Cobb, responding to stupid things that Inspiring Philosophy said about slavery in the New Testament. So look for that. It will be showing up on my Patreon first, as well as for channel members. Those of you who are new channel members today, you'll get a chance to watch it early and ad-free. So that's coming. And then on Sunday, I am going to be doing a recording with Dr. Joshua Bowen and Paulogia for a new
Hey,
video
all
that
right.
will be appearing on Paulogia's channel probably in the next few weeks. So keep your eyes open for that. That's all coming up. And then I think that's it. So we'll be back for Kitty at Breet next Thursday, and then for another stream
Who's going to be
next
reading
week
with
on
you?
Friday. I don't know yet. I haven't asked. So I have to. I'm not doing a great job of getting these things. It's been you were moving the last 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I was frantically getting my house ready
Ready
to
to
put
put on
on
the
the
market,
market.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's but it won't be DeFreak. So it'll be someone else. So yeah, I will. I'm still sorting that out. So
Okay.
but stay tuned. That's coming. Rabbi Kana read with me last night. It was fun. And we read Psalm 91, which, if you don't know, is an exorcism ritual. So that's cool.
There you
But
go.
yeah, so come and check out all those things coming up. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please be safe, be good to each other, and until next time, Hatikva.